Welcome back to the Yukon Gold Podcast with Will Nemo. Yukon Gold Partnership is working towards a sustainable future for everyone on planet Earth. We are helping people to reach their full potential by delivering the gold standard in energy design, education, and installation. I am back in the podcast saddle to talk about the future of humanity, the Greater Reset agenda, liberal dictatorship, not eating bugs, and defeating the World Economic Forum, as well as the latest Clown World Order news. Please check out Ubuntu Contributism, a blueprint for human prosperity, the Kindle edition, in my affiliate link. Contributism is based upon the concept that a person is happiest and also most efficient when he or she is doing something that they are good at. It's based on the conjecture that people actually enjoy contributing to their society, and the only reason we don't do it more often is that there are not enough opportunities for doing so. Let's do our part to build a lasting legacy for future generations. The time is now. Join the Greater Reset at https://thegreaterreset.org and book a free discovery call with myself and my Calendly link. If you are an accredited real estate investor, skilled tradesperson, engineer, medical or farming professional, and would like to get involved, please reach out to my LinkedIn profile. All right, today on the podcast, I would like to talk about the Western Energy Corridor, who they are, what they're about, and why we haven't been able to move energy projects forward in this country, namely, you know who, Mr. Trudeau, trying to push the climate agenda on behalf of the WEF. That is the reason why. The Port of Churchill, what it means for Canada, what it could potentially offer in place of a new energy economy for Western Canada, the rise of SMR technologies, small modular reactors for nuclear, and why they can be an alternative to intermittent electrical sources, wind and solar. I want to talk about the Arctic Gateway, again, Churchill, and their resource gateway to the rest of the world. And I want to speak to the case for a united Democratic Republic of Western Canada and why we're moving towards that direction by the next election cycle. All right, let's just jump right into it. So, the Western Energy Corridor is a group of individuals. They've been working on a plan over 10 years. They've first examined the merit of multiple energy corridors prior to determining any specific commodity or market usage. The Western Energy Corridor would be linking Western Canada to Churchill, Manitoba, and has been designed and intended to contain one or more combinations of a natural gas transmission system, an oil pipeline, or a high-voltage electric transmission system. In the future, as Canadian and global energy needs change, the purpose and use of the Western Energy Corridor will change and potentially move toward low-carbon fuels such as hydrogen. The Western Energy Corridor Incorporated tends to make the corridor available to governments and infrastructure investors that are financially knowledgeable of the requirements to initiate or complete a major project. While concepts for a corridor from Alberta to Manitoba have been suggested many times during the last 60 years, this is the first serious initiative of creating a true energy corridor. This corridor has been conceptualized and planned with the purpose of following through to development, including but not limited to terrain analysis, cost analysis, conceptual engineering, environmental and regulatory requirements, construction and operation, and such that all areas of Canada can materially benefit from its existence. So they have, as of August the 22nd, 2022, they have sent a letter to Stephen Guilbeault, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, to the Government of Canada. They submitted an application to conduct a regional assessment under the Federal Impact Assessment Act. They are looking at the global shortage of many resources and commodities. Canada is well positioned to be a global supplier, but we have insufficient pipeline and port infrastructure. The urgent need to address climate change has intensified. The Western Energy Corridor allows for the use of transmission of hydroelectricity from Manitoba to reinforce Western Canada's growing wind and solar infrastructure. The aggressive territorial aspirations of countries such as Russia and China have intensified. It makes it more critical that Canada reinforce its sovereignty over the North. Shortages of oil, natural gas, grains, and minerals have emerged globally during the last year. The war in Ukraine and Russia's intent to weaponize energy has exacerbated these shortages. Even if the war is ended in the near term, these shortages are likely to continue due to climate change impacts. Furthermore, the world will still need to utilize oil and gas for the foreseeable future to meet demand, and particularly for specific irreplaceable uses. Canada represents perhaps the most responsibly developed source of oil and gas in the world and should be the supplier of choice. We also could be a reliable source of grains and minerals. To do so, we need to get our resources to Tidewater, and we believe the Western Energy Corridor would be the optimal way to do so. Alberta has taken aggressive steps to address climate change by ending its coal-fired electricity generation and replacing it with wind, solar, and gas-fired generation. It is also taking steps to initiate carbon capture and storage to adjust the emissions from fossil fuel generators. Nevertheless, the growing solar and wind generation capacities must be backed up due to their intermittent nature. Manitoba has a significant source of clean hydroelectricity. The construction of a major power line in the Western Energy Corridor would meet increasing electrical demands in Western Canada and support growing wind and solar generation assets. As you are aware, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba generate and sell electricity through their provincially owned utilities, while Alberta's power sector is deregulated and largely privately owned. As such, exchanging power amongst these provinces presents economic, technical, and political challenges. The federal government is uniquely positioned to provide critical leadership in developing an integrated, clean electricity grid utilizing the Western Energy Corridor. Finally, the issue of sovereignty over Canada's north seems more critical than ever. Establishing Western Energy Corridor would make it clear to the world how Canada values its vast northern region. Most communities in Canada's north burn diesel or oil fuel to generate electricity. If facilities could be provided to provide LNG or hydrogen at or near Churchill from a natural gas moved in the corridor, it would be distributed to our northern communities via the seasonal sea lift. This would have the dual benefit of providing a cleaner environment and reinforcing Canada's commitment to the north. These significant changes highlight the need for a regional assessment of the Western Energy Corridor. However, the description of the proposed corridor and various Other technical factors have not changed from the previous application. Accordingly, we are appending our early application and request that it be made part of the new application. Following a review for this application, we are prepared to answer any questions you may have regarding the Western Energy Corridor and our request for a regional assessment. We would appreciate the opportunity to further our dialogue with you and our colleagues to describe our efforts in a greater detail and discuss the significant benefits this corridor would bring to all of Canada. Thank you for your time and your consideration of this matter. We look forward to your positive response to this request at our earliest convenience. Yours very truly, Western Energy Corridor Incorporated. Barry Singleton, Professional Engineer, Director. Attachments. So, the Western Energy Corridor Incorporated is proposing a multi-provincial all-Canadian corridor extending from east central Alberta across Saskatchewan to Churchill. Conceptually, the primary purpose of the corridor is to allow oil and natural gas pipelines or other future resources, such as hydrogen, to reach Hudson's Bay. In addition, high-voltage DC power lines co-located within the corridor would enhance the availability of green hydroelectricity in the western provinces, increasing access to solar and wind, potentially lowering the cost of large-scale clean energy and stabilizing the electrical grid. This all-Canadian venture will economically serve Canadian markets, build critical infrastructure in Canada's north, and reduce central and eastern Canada's reliance on foreign energy and expand Canada's trade with global markets by way of the sovereign internal waters of Canada. So they're proposing a regional assessment that would inform both future project-specific and federal impact assessment decisions. Its potential for effects from development within federal jurisdiction, including cumulative effects within the region, potential impacts including cumulative effects to the rights of Indigenous people in the region. So they're going through all of the proper channels. So there's a full report here. I will link it in my description. One thing I want to clear up about Yukon Gold Energy, and this is something that has been nagging at me a little bit, is we are not energy biased, right? We are a solutions first company and a solutions first partnership. So we look at energy as a portfolio. We don't look at energy from a dogmatic point of view saying that solar, good, wind, good, oil, gas, bad, or small nuclear reactors, bad, right? We look at it as what is the best economic choice and the best delivery method for energy in the region or jurisdiction that you're providing service. In the north, primarily right now, especially the Yukon, most of the Northwest Territories, they're running diesel generators 24/7 with some intermittent hydro and solar, not very much wind. Alberta is transitioning from coal over to natural gas, LNG, and they're adding a lot of solar and wind to their market. Again, it's a privately regulated, privately dominated market, unlike British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, or Yukon and Northwest Territories. So Alberta has an advantage and a disadvantage. But just saying that we must use renewables is a misleading statement, right? Because solar and wind require those materials to build them, right? Silica, steel, right? They all come at a manufacturing cost. And unlike some warmer territories such as Australia, it's not feasible to have battery banks or battery backups at colder temperatures. The technology doesn't exist, or it hasn't been developed to a state where we can have reliable battery backup. That's why the Western Energy Corridor group is proposing the high voltage transmission system interconnected with Manitoba. They want to have hard power, or a grid source of power that's firm power as opposed to intermittent, to help bolster the renewable energy in Alberta and Western Canada in general. Now, I am very much a proponent of solar and wind, but I also support small nuclear reactors and LNG. I think they have their place. I know that a lot of people are very skeptical of nuclear, but the technology hasn't really evolved much since the 70s, because it's gotten such a negative reaction in the press, especially since Chernobyl in 1986 and the Fukushima reactor disaster in 2011. But small nuclear reactors can generate between 10 and 300 megawatts and are smaller than their flagship CANDU reactors. So they have a smaller footprint and they're easier to build. So they're about 10% the size of some of the plants in Ontario. And the international opportunity potential is over $50 billion per year from 2030 to 2040, right? So there is a roadmap and a plan for SMRs in Canada. If you want to read it, I can link it in the description at smrroadmap.ca. I'm going to read you the briefing document here. So, Natural Resources Canada has convened a small roadmap to engage stakeholders in the future of small modular reactors in Canada. A small modular reactor is a nuclear fission reactor that are designed to be built in a smaller size but in larger numbers than most of the world's current nuclear fleet. Some small nuclear reactors have existed since the beginning of reactor technology 50 years ago. This includes research reactors at universities, demonstration reactors, and marine propulsion reactors used in vessels of several navies for decades. SMRs are designed to be small in both power output and physical size, modular, meaning they are factory constructed, portable, and scalable. Reactors using nuclear fission produce energy for electricity, hybrid energy systems, direct heating, district heating, water desalination, and high-quality steam for heavy-duty applications. Canada has one of the most promising domestic market for SMRs. Conservative estimates place the potential values of SMR in Canada at $5.3 billion between 2025 and 2040. Globally, again, much bigger, between $150 billion between 2025 and 2040. Canada has a window of opportunity to lead, and it has all the necessary elements: a strong international brand, flexible and performance-based regulator, world-class nuclear facilities, demonstration sites, a mature supply chain, and domestic uranium mining industry, extensive nuclear operating experience, and strong science and technology in related materials science, medicine, radiation, sterilization, and food safety. In Canada, these SMRs have three major areas of application. For on-grid power generation, especially in provinces phasing out of coal to the near future, Utilities wanting to replace end-of-life coal plants with non-emitting base load plants of similar size, larger SMRs are likely to align to this application. On and off-grid combined heat and power for heavy industry. Oil sands producers and remote mines could benefit from a medium-term option for bulk heat and power that would be more reliable and cleaner than our current energy sources. Smaller medium SMRs are likely to fit this need. Off-grid power, district heating, and desalination in remote communities. These currently rely almost exclusively on diesel fuel, as I previously mentioned, which has various limitations, cost, and emissions. Renewables and batteries can mitigate these limitations to some extent for residential power, but may not supply building heat, nor they offer reliable bulk energy to open up economic development. Very small SMRs may address these needs. So, traditionally, nuclear power has been used to provide base load to larger power grids such as Ontario, where nuclear provides 60% of the province's electrical power with very low emissions. SMR designs should be able to take nuclear to smaller power grids, Saskatchewan, off-grid remote mines, and northern communities to allow for greater load following to replace fossil fuels and support the integration of more intermittent renewables in the grid within a hybrid system. SMRs could also potentially lead to a greater greenhouse gas reduction through the decarbonization of the transportation industry, which would also be an enabler for improved infrastructure such as high-speed electric rail services. All of these capabilities would make a dramatic difference in Canada's ability to meet its Paris Accord commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So, there is some key findings from the roadmap. We're getting close to time here on this podcast, but I just want to point them out real quick. Finding 1, SMR deployment would require a fleet approach. Finding 2, demonstrating SMR technology is key in capturing mover advantage. 3, appropriate risk sharing among power utilities and industry. 4, public and Indigenous groups as well as other potential end users have concerns about safety, waste management, and overall cost. 5, Canada's regulatory framework and waste management regime are well positioned to respond to the SMR paradigm shift, but some modernization will be necessary to reflect the reality of the smaller size of an SMR. I will link that in the description. All right. The last thing I want to touch on is borders. Western Canada needs to think about becoming its own entity in the next 5 to 7 years. There has been increasing pressure from the federal government to meddle in provincial affairs and jurisdictions. We've seen that with the Alberta Sovereignty Act and Danielle Smith. My official position is Western sovereignty, and our own sovereign nation within Canada. That's what we should be moving towards. Because of the policies in place in the federal level, we missed a major opportunity this past year to start exporting LNG to Germany, and they decided to go with Qatar instead, and they've signed a 15-year contract to export LNG to Germany. So it would be best to take the advice of the Western Energy Corridor Incorporated, which I'm going to reach out to independently. And also, as I've always stressed on this podcast, your own independent sovereignty in the sense of grid independence, food security, shelter, the federal government trying to ban certain type of guns. It's federal overreach at all of the levels, right? We are supposedly living in a free, independent country, but it really hasn't felt like it the last 2 years. If you'd like to talk more about that, please check out Yukon Gold on social media. We have a Discord group, a Telegram page, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my Twitter at Yukon_Gold Limited, Instagram Yukon Gold Energy. We have our YouTube page. Please leave us a review on Podchaser or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow, like, subscribe on your favorite platform. If you want to connect with me directly, I have a Linktree page and a Calendly. As always, I'm working towards my life task set before me, and I am forever a servant in the Tao. Thank you. Namaste from Will Nemo. Cheers.